Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, aloha and good morning. Thanks for starting off your week with us. This is Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji and Yanji Denise, and we are live here on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This morning, we are shining the spotlight here in the city and county of Honolulu, focusing on some of the issues that are happening and being discussed at Honolulu Hale.
Yes, we have a guest who is always popular. Mayor Rick Blangiardi is joining us now, live from his office. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning. I don't know where that always popular came from, but I'll take it, Yanji. Thank you. Good morning, Ryan.
Well, let's just say we get a lot of tune-in when you're on, and we always appreciate people engaging with you.
We have a lot of tune-in because it's been a long time since I've been on. Let me just start off by acknowledging both of you in winning the Telly Awards. That's how long it's been. But I know that award especially is not easily earned and won, and I think it's a tribute to the work you put into this show and what Spotlight means in the media landscape. Congratulations. Well done.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Let's talk about where we are with COVID. We indeed, as you say, have not spoken for a while. Things have pretty much opened up. How are you feeling right now with the rise of the BA.5 variant? And what are your conversations like with the healthcare officials that you talk to on a regular basis?
Well, to be perfectly candid, we've not had any conversations lately with the State Department of Health, although I did see Dr. Char at Queens Hospital last week. But I participated in a couple of different panels, and Ray Vara last week from Hawaii Pacific Health, when we discussed it during a Hawaii Executive Conference meeting, kind of positioned it as the fact that our hospitalizations are remaining real low, even though we're seeing case counts come up, and nobody wants to be able to predict anything. We understand this will be pretty infectious disease, but it's going to be pretty much infectious like the flu, if you will, and that's what I'm hoping is the case as well. There's no question that there's a lingering effect here. We've been talking about COVID since before we came in and since we've been in, and I don't have an ability to predict where it's going to go, but you listen to the medical experts, and that's how I've heard it positioned, and that's the only thing I can relay. I can't predict anything on this. I think like everybody, we're trying to move forward as best we possibly can. We're planning on moving forward versus having anything get in our way here that becomes an obstacle. And I wish that for all of us as we now get ready to see kids going back to school and everything else and our lives going forward and all the efforts we're making to rebuild businesses and all the other things we're doing. Let's just hope we can play through this.
You mentioned kids going back to school, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the decision that was made by the Department of Education to make masks optional for both teachers and students. I know this is a state issue, but wanted to get your thoughts on the overall decision moving forward with this mask ruling moving forward.
Yeah, if we've learned anything over all this time with COVID, there's a real big difference when you say it's a mandate versus optional and how people respond. I think it was a wise decision to do that. It will be interesting to see what the actual experience is. I know in my day-to-day right now, I deal with people who come in here wearing masks, other people who don't, and go into a conference room or different settings and whatever. So I think overall, we're kind of dealing with this sort of optional place, and I think that's probably a good thing for the kids as well, and the parents themselves and those people who feel that they feel better about that, and other people who feel like, okay, I'm glad my kid doesn't have to wear a mask anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about the new chief. In the past, when we had you on, you were frustrated with the police commission and just how long it took to get someone in place. Right. We have someone in place now, just a few weeks on the job, but tell us a little bit about your impressions of him, your interactions with him, and what you feel is his first order of business.
Well, now that long protracted period of hiring a police chief is behind us, I don't think I could be any more pleased than I am with Chief Joe Logan. He is both a trained and a natural leader. And I say that in the context of his background and what I think I've seen very quickly he's brought to the job, and his ability to assess and provide an overview of the conversations we've had. We've had numerous meetings already. They started right away, actually, the day after that he became police chief in here. And so I can tell you honestly, not to disparage the efforts of Rade Vanek during his interim year, or for that matter, my brief time with Chief Ballard when she was in office, we are already meeting in ways and conversations that we're having that just hadn't taken place yet in my entire tenure as mayor. So I could not be any more encouraged. In fact, if you will, because you probably wouldn't know about this, but we took, as in the words of Judge Rod Miley, we had a historic meeting in my office in the mayor's conference room last week, in which we had a prosecutor, Steve Arm, and representatives from his outfit, Chief Logan. He brought in several of his top aides and the judiciary in an unprecedented conversation between police, the prosecutor's arm, and with the judiciary with respect to, and we also brought in a number of key business leaders, all CEOs representing the downtown corridor, although we talked about Waikiki as well, on what we wanted to do from the standpoint of enforcement, and actually resulted already, and it hasn't gone public yet, but I'll just tell you, on the judiciary deciding that they would eliminate on a Monday through Friday basis the release on recognizance that was going on, which means the prosecutors the next day, they're going to be held over if they're arrested to have a chance in the courtroom to deal with that. And so part of this effort right now is better, stronger law enforcement, make people feel safe, but really to address the situation that we've seen with respect to, we've got some bad actors out there with lots of priors who've been getting their wrists slapped, putting back out on the street to become a detriment to society. And we noticed those, especially in a couple of key pronounced areas in Waikiki and Chinatown, both of which we have zero tolerance for. So this is going to go a long way in helping us deal with the criminal element that hides in that homeless population, but is not really homeless at all. They choose to live that way, but there's some bad actors there. So we're making inroads there. And to get that kind of an agreement, knowing that Steve Arm is really focused on weed and seed in other areas, we've had to rename the program in Waikiki to Safe and Sound. It's don't get me started on that. It's an administrative thing, but nonetheless has the same effect, the same impact. So I've made it a really strong policy, and that's where I'm supportive of Chief Logan so much, because I think we see eye to eye. The job one is about public safety, family safe. That is definitely across our whole island, and we're determined to make people feel that way to the extent possible. Now, much of that resides on the police department. We are understaffed currently, but I have a lot of confidence in leadership and the leadership's ability to change that. We have a very good working relationship with SHOPO, and we want people to feel safe. So that's where we are.
I want to expand a little bit more about that understaffing at the police department. We know that that is an issue for the department, but it's also an issue that you're seeing throughout the city and county with a number of positions and vacancies open right now. How do you address that, and how are you tackling that, not only on the HPD side, but also on the county level as a whole?
Yeah, well, we're attacking that with a lot of aggressivity, and we went public last week with the article, but we've been working on that since, as soon as we became operational, which was probably in December of 20, we started being able to have access to the budget books or whatever, and we got sworn in on January 2nd, 21. We recognize the staffing shortage that had gone on for decades. We've actually dedicated a lot of resources to dealing with that, because for me, even though nobody ever talked about the word staffing during the entire campaign, to come in and see the kinds of vacancies we have, I was cognizant of what was going on with the police department, but across the board in our key departments of operating at 60 to 70% capacity, and the impact that has not only on morale of existing workers, but how it compromises the leadership team we've brought in here from reaching their potential. We've incorporated the benefits of our being part of the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative on 2 different tracks. There's a lot of work we're doing there. I do want to speak about our budget in a second here and tell you that this is one of the things that was a priority in our budgeting. This was our first budget, by the way. Today's July 18th, and it took us 18 months to get to our own budget. When we came into office, we were dealing with the fiscal year 21 budget, which, because of COVID, And it had actually been impacted by the cost cutting of the prior administration and other things that were put in place. And then we had to balance their fiscal year 22 budget. We had 60 days, which was built on a model of 21. And there was, if you remember, substantial deficiency there as well. And we did that without implementing any furloughs, or we didn't reduce core city services, and we didn't raise property taxes, but we had to impose a hiring freeze against already an established vacancy base that was unacceptable. We were able to lift that very quickly within a few months as we got going. But that first 6 months of the fiscal year 21 budget, which was a remnant of COVID and everything that they had reacted to, all of last year, fiscal year 22, was not our priority in our budget, but we had to live within those lines, and that's just the way it is. And now this year here, we were able to really turn, which we just began 18 days ago, with a budget that's reflective, $3.22 billion operating budget, reflective of our priorities. And I can promise you, at the top of that list is staffing. And you need money to hire people. And we've made those priorities. We've made those allocations. And I've said repeatedly, and I'll say it now, even though we're only 18 months into office, for all the things that we're dealing with, on all the big issues, homelessness, rail, affordable housing, infrastructure, safety, as I just talked about, all the things that, challenge a mayor's team, that if we can, as a contribution to the city and county of Honolulu, get this staffing thing worked out, not just in the police department, but across the board, this will be a lasting contribution. This is a legacy kind of a move, because honestly, it's been left like this for decades. And I'm not saying that to disparage any of my predecessors, but this is just something from an operational standpoint should be unacceptable. And it is unacceptable to us as an organization or as an administration.
I want to get back to that meeting that you referenced with Chief Logan, Prosecutor Alm, yourself, and those business leaders, and that change that you referenced to letting people out Monday through Friday on their own reconnaissance. Tell us a little bit about, is that island or county-wide, or is that just for arrests that are made in those two hot spots? And
no, it's countywide. It'll be countywide. This is our first step forward, and and having the judiciary here, we're going. I mean, I don't believe I'm talking out of school when you have, in this particular case, which I think is really good, that Steve Arm, who I said to, I was told by his reputation, he was a prosecutor's prosecutor, and a new chief of police who's a strong leader as well, two strong personalities aligned. The judiciary has always remained a bit on the outside because their role to enforce the law, by definition of the law, sometimes can be at odds with that. We've heard that repeatedly in past times, that the police were doing their work only to have it thrown out, people thrown out. This is trying to get a better alignment to break down that circumstance, that we're all working together for public good and public safety, and that there's an alignment there, at least to give the prosecutors that opportunity in a courtroom to be able to make their case, to argue against these violators, as opposed to just having them turned back out on the street. Like I said, I have a list of them. There's probably, I don't know if I have all of them, there's probably about 140 people out there that are populating in some of these places that have the kinds of things that, unfortunately, when they finally do something really bad and then you read about it or it gets reported on, that they had all these priors. And then the person who lives here says, how can this person with all these priors be out there walking around doing this? Wasn't it inevitable that they were just going to go off the rail here and do something bad? That's what we're trying to attack. And we have a bunch of them, too many of them in my mind.
All right, we want to popcorn over to another issue because there are a lot of things that we want to cover. The next issue, we want to talk about is what's happening with Red Hill. We spoke to the governor last week for the first time since that report came out from the Navy. He expressed his frustration not only with the timeline, but with the overall transparency with the Navy in communications and the things that were disclosed in that report that were not made available to the public and to officials like himself earlier. Your thoughts on what that report revealed and the overall timeline that the Navy is outlining to drain Red Hill?
Well, I think it's really clear that a lot of bad mistakes were made, very, very serious mistakes in what's transpired. And I've had the benefit of being in the company and being briefed by Secretary Del Toro, Admiral Paparo at length, and quite honestly, just last week, meeting Admiral Barnett, the new guy in charge, for want of a better way, with his team, and he's been brought in primarily for that. So, look, a lot of mistakes have been made. not good. And we were on the side of asking for the wells to be drained, and that's what's been agreed to. I know about the video that's come out. I've seen that. I mean, that's what a 20,000 gallon leak looks like. I mean, when we hear the word leak, probably most of us the connotation is you're thinking about drip, 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 and then you look at a video like that, and it's mind numbing. But that said, it's about the road ahead going forward. I asked Admiral Barnett last week about the timeline of 2.5 years, and what I keep hearing back from the Navy is that and I know nothing. I know nothing about the timeline it would take. I saw Ernie Lau's comments yesterday and David Shapiro's comments about he thinks it could be, a tank could be drained in a certain period of time. I know that the Navy has talked repeatedly about safety and what it's going to take to store those millions of gallons of jet fuel. Right now, we'll see if that gets amended. Right, I know it's at the end of 24. I don't know how to weigh in on that. I can only tell you that on a going forward basis, in my conversations with the highest level of military, there's been a lot of acknowledgement, a lot of understanding that real damage has been done with our community, a real determination to build back trust. They know it's going to take a long time because what's happened has been very egregious. And so I have, to my surprise, starting out with the fact that the Navy reversed its position from we'll never drain these wells within 4 months to drain the wells, to the acknowledgement of what's gone on. It's just one of those situations here where we just want to put all eyes ahead on what we do going forward. And nobody's forgiving anybody for any wrongdoing. They're going to have to pay for it, and with a lot of effort in rebuilding trust.
And part of the problem also, of course, is the fact that the Halawa shaft is closed down indefinitely. Are you concerned about, future development? We hear a lot about the need for affordable housing and just development overall and sustaining our tourism industry. All of that requires quite a bit of water. Are you concerned about shortages ahead? How are you feeling about that?
Well, if the operative word is concerned, of course we're concerned. But right now, in our discussions, and quite honestly, a lot's been said since the letter went out to the construction industry, is that we're going to be granting permits at the time of application on that. And at this point, we're not saying we have a water shortage here that's going to get in the way of any further construction at this point. Is there a concern? Yes, but there are some things that we've done. We've provided $6.5 million over at the Haleiwa wells. It's going to take time to drill other wells. I think, it's on record saying 6 to 7 years on drinking water wells. But we're going to go forward at this point. And quite honestly, what was said at the time probably shouldn't have been said about its impact on construction. But there's still an ongoing concern. There's no doubt the Halawa shaft is a big part of all of this. So we're just going to have to go about it very carefully.
I'm wondering if you can just shed some light into just the overall conversations that are happening around Red Hill, because it seems like we're talking to many of the leaders, from the congressional delegation to the governor to Ernie Lau to city council members. There's a lot of voices involved in this and a lot of concern. How do you as the mayor facilitate through all these levels of leadership and trying to decipher, who's maybe responsible or what that final point of, who owns, I guess, the microphone in this situation when there's so many voices?
Right. That's a great question, because honestly, and I got punished for it in the beginning because Ernie Lau doesn't report directly to me. He reports to the Board of Water Supply, and there's a dotted line there. And just like the police commission reports to that commission and the fire department. And so there's a role in that for the mayor, obviously, and responsibility. But the voices, and that's what I said. And I made the comment. I had no comment at the time about Red Hill because Ernie, this was early on. Ernie was in the position of negotiating. And I come from a background where there's one voice at the negotiating table. And the last thing I was going to do, without kind of detailed knowledge that I knew Ernie had on this issue when everything first happened, we're going back to December now, was to interfere or compromise him in anything that he was doing. And it's always been sort of my sense, even since that time, because as it was then, aligned with the federal government and the state government and asking for the wells to be drained. I didn't want to usurp what Ernie was doing. So I've tried to stay in my lane on this. We deal with, and I'm on constant conversations with Ernie, but I'm letting the officials who have the higher hand in this deal with it at the state level. And when asked to participate and voice my opinion, I do. But I'm not the lead guy in this at all. And so that's where it's at. It's at the governor's level. I know we've got a congressional delegation that's weighed in, and rightfully so, because it is a federal situation. I'm just concerned as mayor of the city and county of Honolulu, for how it impacts our residents here and what that means on a going forward basis, to the extent when we get asked for our involvement. That's our voice in this.
I can't have a conversation with you without bringing up rail. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Really? I thought we would try that this time. Go ahead.
I'm interested to know, when we had Lori Kahikina on here last, she said if all went according to plan and everything would have to be perfect, that she'd be able to hand over a portion of the route, perhaps sometime in the fall. She was thinking perhaps October. How's that timeline holding up? And when do you think people can actually ride the rail?
Well, I'm still living with the hope that we'll get it operational by the end of this calendar year. Whether it's in the fall, October, November, or possibly December, it's kind of fluid right now, in the spirit of what you yourself said, that Lori said, with it being perfect. I think we don't want to begin the service unless all the T's have been crossed, I's have been dotted, everything checks out. But we're still planning. In fact, we met earlier this morning on that, and I have a heart meeting later on today. We're still planning. Our goal is before the end of this year. We've put the money into our budget for operating, and that's what we're counting on. That's what we're hoping for. And quite honestly, I'm excited to see it happen, because I think once it becomes a reality that it's engaging the population, people getting on it and they're riding. In fact, we had a really great conversation with the Navy last week about their ability to help us, because if people live out in the west side, at least we can be able to get, to Pearl Harbor to help us as an employment center with some of the ridership of that. So I think for all that's been talked about all these many years, bringing it into reality is going to play very well, I think, in the minds of most people while we go about the business of constructing the rest of it.
And if we can give us an update on the rest of it, that construction, the conversations, of course, that you're having at a federal level about
Yes.
Where the ultimate ending will be. We know that there has been proposals put forth. What updates can you provide us about where we're at right now?
Okay, well, we're waiting to have our recovery plan approved, which was submitted early June. It was due June 30th. And at the time when I was back in Washington earlier this year, meeting with the FTA, they told me they thought it would be weeks after they got the report, but I never expected it before July 1. So we're kind of in that window right now. And I think our recovery plan, I believe it's going to be approved because it has been vetted throughout, not only by three different entities on all the concepts, but in our negotiations with the FTA with respect to the change in terminus, financing, or whatever. And so, as you know, our plan is to take it to South Street, Halikuila Civic Center, if you will. That timeline is probably 7 years from now, sometime in 29. I know we've probably got 30 out there, 2030, but I think that's what we're going to push for is 29 to get it all the way. I think we're going to be hopefully operational by this year. I think that a year later, by probably January or February of 2024, the rest of all of 23, we'll be able to bring the service to Middle Street, although I don't think we're going to operate the buses from Middle Street. I think we'll operate the buses from probably a Lagoon Drive area because that makes for better multimodal turnarounds because of the way Middle Street's constructed. That's going to be on pause from that operation until we can get it down to Civic Center. And so, but the guideway has already been built to Middle Street. You're going to begin to see us come down the Dillingham corridor, and all the construction will be going on to get it where we want it to go. So you're going to start to feel the rail in town, its presence from a construction standpoint fairly soon. So that's where we're at. We the whole point of this recovery plan, build credibility, and regain the trust of the FTA was to get them back to the table as a construction partner. They've not given us any money of that. They've withheld that $744 million since 2017. That forced the city to make, because of ongoing construction demands, to have to borrow money and create substantial financial costs and the financing of those monies to maintain construction. To get them to come back will be significant, and that's what's at play right now.
Okay, I want to shift over to the world of politics before we let you go. Ask you if you've been watching the debates, and you don't have to tell us who, but if you've made your selection for governor.
You know, it's almost painful to watch the debates. It brings back so many wonderful memories of only yesterday, it seems. You know, to be honest with you, I haven't spent that much time and I've been reading about it. I plan to watch the next one that's coming up. It's just, I'm not making excuses, but sometimes I don't even know what's on TV anymore. I lived in a world where I had 6 television sets in my office, and I pretty much could tell you what was on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesdays on a given channel, to a whole different world, to be honest with you. And it's not that I'm not interested in who's going to get elected. I am very much, but I've been mostly reading about it and listening to conversations. But I would like to watch this next big one coming up.
You know,
so no choice made yet?
What are you running for, Yunji? You would be my first pick, and whatever you decide to run for, it would be you. Ryan, I don't know about
Mahalo for that.
Yunji,
Okay. You know, as we wrap up here, I just wanted to give you a final moment, your final message to the viewers and those watching here about all the things that are happening at the city right now, and just your final thoughts as we head into this next work week.
Well, we have a lot going on, and I'm very proud of this team. You know, and we recognize the moment in time because leadership is situational. We spent a lot of time today talking about public safety and things that we're trying to do that are unprecedented to help ensure that. But, you know, I would tell you, and I'm very proud of our core program. We don't have enough time to go into it, but I think we're on the right direction with that. If you were to ask me where I spend my time right now in my own mind on the issues that we want to really attack, homelessness is one. The city's involvement with affordable housing, which we have significant projects on and things in motion right there, and then fixing DPP, which is also part of that. Those 3 are the big 3 in my mind. All the while we go about what we've talked about, public safety, the rail project and what we're dealing, certainly our infrastructure issues that we're doing, the big capital improvement plans. All this is designed for better quality of life and what the city can do. And so you asked me the question earlier about Red Hill, and I said I stay in my lane because you got to know where you are involved, if you will. All these other issues are so important on what the city can get done, that we're focused on those things. And I'm going to say it again, it's not about me as mayor. It's about the team of men and women that walked in the door with me when we began all of this, and our commitment to make sure we do a good job for everybody. And that's where we're at. And I think I can say this, because, you know, I'm not making any excuses about COVID, but it was more than a distraction. And our however many first year in office, we're really now beginning to get some real traction. You know, from a fundamental management standpoint, you need to really understand the problems before you can offer solutions. And the problems that we were facing in all the areas we've talked about were very complex, not easily solved. And we wanted to make sure we had solutions that would work, that would be highly effective, and that we could execute. And that's what a lot of the first 18 months has been about. And I'm very excited about the road ahead, and hopefully we'll be making some significant announcements.
Well, when you do decide to make those announcements, you know who to call. So thank you so much for being here this morning. We do appreciate your time. Mayor Rick Blangiardi joining us live from his office in Honolulu. Mahalo for starting your week with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Always great to hear from the mayor, and we cover so many topics, Ryan. That issue of public safety was very interesting to hear about how the mayor got the stakeholders together, the prosecutor, the police chief, and the judiciary, along with a number of business leaders, to talk about some of the core problems that are happening in our community when it comes to repeat offenders. He said that they have a list of about 140 people or so who are the ones who he feels are perpetrating a lot of these crimes. And so one major change that they are making is to not release people on their own reconnaissance, but, you know, have them stay over, detained, and then have to go before a judge and a prosecutor the next day. We'll see, you know, what that bears out, but that's a very interesting change in the way things are handled.
Yeah, we also heard from the mayor about recognizing that, you know, what we're seeing in terms of crime and saying that it is a priority for the administration with that of public safety, and shifting a lot of focus as well to Waikiki, expecting a program similar to what we're seeing in the Weed and Seed happening in the downtown and Chinatown areas to transpire in Waikiki. He also noted the relationship working with the new police chief, Joe Logan, about how he's pleased with the leadership skills that he brings and the conversations that they've already had thus far. Of course, HPD and the city continue to do with some of those staffing shortages, and the mayor saying that continues to be a priority in making sure that they not only find ways to fill those positions, but look at the ways in which the onboarding process and the strategic planning around some of these vacancies that have been open for years, he said, are managed moving forward, saying that that is something that he deems as a very high priority as part of his administration moving forward.
Yeah, interesting to get his thoughts on COVID. He does feel that we're moving through this part of the pandemic, and he's comfortable with the Department of Education's decision to make masks rather not mandatory for teachers and students in the classroom. And just to get his overall thoughts on Red Hill, he did express some concerns about the report that was released, but also saying that he is trusting others that are in different offices to handle a lot of that, offering his opinion when it's asked, but really sort of, as he put it, staying in his lane on this very important issue. Very interesting also just to hear his overall thoughts on rail and how much he thinks it's going to change the public's relationship and their perception of the project once we get to ride it, and they're hoping it'll be by the end of the year.
Yeah, we know a lot of people have been asking that question, if it will in fact be available to actually be operational and where people can ride and utilize the rail at some point this year. With the mayor saying that continues to be his hope and goal by the end of the year, and we'll just have to wait to see how things transpire. And there are always a lot of conversations and topics that we get through when speaking with the mayor. We encourage you to go back and watch or listen to this as a podcast if you miss any portion of the interview. On Wednesday, we'll be speaking to someone who actually ran against the mayor for his seat, but now has moved on to run for lieutenant governor. That's Keith Amemiya.
That's right. Keith Amemiya is going to be talking about his bid for lieutenant governor with us on Wednesday. And then Duke Iona is going to be talking about his bid for governor, running on the Republican primary there on Friday. So a week of politics ahead. We do hope to see you right back here Wednesday on Spotlight Hawaii.
Aloha. We'll see you then.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.